Okay everyone, today we are talking about or doing a little bit of a repeat of the formatting that we talked about in class maybe last Wednesday. So the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we've got all of the parts that we need to have here in the right order. So remembering that this is a student's work and therefore not necessarily perfect, the first thing we do is we have our heading, and that is a little bit bigger and it is in bold font, so it's nice and clear that it is the heading. The next thing that we do is we have our byline. Now it doesn't matter whether you have by Susan James, whether you just have Susan James. Let's put by Susan. Ooh, that's not what I wanted. Let's just do by Susan James. And there's a few things that we need to look at here. First of all, I've said don't worry about including a time. I think it looks weird, especially at 12 a.m. I don't think any newspaper is going to be paying their authors or their reporters to publish at 12 a.m. That's pretty weird. The other thing that you might not have noticed is up here, we've actually got the 24th, and that's incorrect. So it needs to be the 21st. Okay, and we're going to change ours to 2019 because we're publishing in 2019. It doesn't matter when you pick the date as long as your accident happens just a few days before whenever your article is published. At the bottom, the other thing that keeps driving me crazy is this URL is just really lazy. It's not a proper one and it wouldn't work. So the first problem is here we've got this space, meaning that the URL is not correct. So I'm going to delete that. And usually we add to signify a URL, HTTP or HTTPS ://www. So we don't always have the www, but in this case, at the end of it, if I press space, you can see that it's turned into an instant hyperlink and it looks very reputable. Right, so we've got much better chance of actually getting to a website when it's like that, and that is something that's really easy for you to fix and for you to get right, and it is a text feature. Okay, at this point, the other thing that I'll point out is that we've only got 439 words, which is well below word count, so you can add some more words. When you've got to what you think your sort of final copy is, fantastic. Now we're going to add in our picture and our caption. So over here we have our picture. I'm using Control-C for copy on a Windows system, Command-C on a Mac. Let's stick it around here, but I want to move it over to the side, but I can't. So it's really frustrating. I can move it around here, but things are happening really weirdly. So what I'm going to do is choose layout options, and this symbol is wrap text. Now, if you click on it, you might be lucky enough for it to come up. Yay! But if not, you can just right click on the picture and go to wrap text. Now, at the moment, it is in line with text. It's much easier to move things around if you go square. So I can move it around to pretty much wherever I want now, and it will just go there nicely. I can move my text around later because there's a bit of an odd space here. Okay, so we've got our picture and our picture's moving around. That's pretty great. Now we want our caption. And I'll draw your attention to the caption too quickly here. It's got, in the cycling race Tour Down Under, Mike Kershaw and Tony Kershaw were racing in the hills of Sydney. Now, it doesn't matter where you say this film is or this incident happened. It could be Adelaide Hills, it could be Sydney Hills. I don't mind, as long as you use the same place every time. And it doesn't matter whether you use the name of the race Tour Down Under or a different bike race or you make one up. So the Tour Down Under is a very famous Australian bike race that usually happens in January. It doesn't really matter what you make the name as long as it's believable. So I'm going to highlight, I'm going to Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste, but now it looks really weird. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is Control-Z for undo, and I'm going to do insert, and where am I looking here? Text box. I'm going to go simple text box, Control-V for paste. I'm going to delete this extra space there. And I'm going to make sure that it is also square. So now that I can move it around. All right. So now I have my text box. Now I might not want to have this text box because it looks, or at least the text box looks a little bit obvious. So one of the things that I probably don't want to do, this shape outline or this square looks a bit weird. So I might actually want to say no outline, and that looks a lot more normal. Okay, so what I did was go shape outline and I chose no outline. Now later I'm going to make sure that this box is the same size as the picture, but I want to move around and make some columns first. So the next thing we're going to do is columns. Now you can choose 2 or you can choose 3. So that's what 2 would look like. I'm going to go 3. 2 or 3 columns is not going to make a difference to your grade, to be honest. Doesn't matter whether you do 2 or 3. All right, so we've got 3 columns here, but things look a little bit weird. So we've got a big space here. We've got the picture cutting into our column. We've got this waiting list starting in the middle of a sentence. I don't really like it. So the first thing we're going to do is move the picture to where we want it to be. And when we did our 3-column article that we looked at a few weeks ago, they had the picture in the center, so I'm going to do that. So the first thing that we see, if I move this around here, the first thing that we see is that we have the picture cutting into this 3rd column, which is a bit messy and doesn't look very good. So I'm going to click on the photo, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go crop. This means to cut the picture smaller. So I'm going to cut in, because Tony and Mike Kershaw are the most important people in this. I'm going to cut in and make it a bit smaller. And there we go. So now we make that a bit smaller there, maybe a little bit smaller again because I want it to try and sit in the middle of the columns. And now I want to make this match. So I want to drag this in a bit, it's too wide. And I want to drag this up to make sure there's no wasted space. The other thing is, even before I have this picture, I have this sentence here which is sitting up the top, and I actually forgot to put it in the columns. So I want to Control X, I'm going to cut it and I'm going to just paste it in front of here so it looks like it's part of the columns. Now my problem is I've got all this weird spacing here, so I want to actually delete. Up to. That didn't work very well. And actually maybe I want to put that in the column too. So I'm going to Control X and paste that with Control V. How do I want this to sit? Maybe use left font. Maybe what I want to do is make the date as part of the article, but the author line there. Okay. Now I want to make, I'm going to crop again just to make this picture a little bit smaller because it's taking up a lot of space. So I'm going to cut this up a little bit to make it a bit smaller. The next thing that's happened is we've got all of this happening here. So again, I want to move this up to the top. Now the third thing that's happening here is that we've got these big spaces in these margins, and I think it'll look better if we had narrower spaces and wider margins. So I'm going to go with layout. No, I'm not. I'm going to go view, view, and make sure ruler is ticked on. So this is no ruler. We're going to add the ruler back in. See how you've got these grey bits up the top for the columns? I'm going to drag it in just a little bit and make the margins a lot narrower. Okay, so now my work all fits on one page. I've got nice narrow margins, but it's still nice and clear. Now the last thing I've got to do is get all of our text in the right place. So, first of all, at the moment this text, I'm going to go back to home. At the moment this text is justified. Okay, and that means that it goes straight from this side across to this side and it has like a nice square shape to it. I'll show you the difference if we turn, you can see this section here. This is not justified, this is justified. It looks much more square. Right, justified is probably a very good font to use, especially in articles. Normally I don't like it very much, but for articles it makes it look a lot better and more official. The problem that we do sometimes have with justified is we get some pretty big spaces here. So you could turn it into non-justified font, but I actually quite like the justified font. What you can do instead is play around with your columns or add words. For example, after that, the family fell into deep mourning for Mike. Okay, and then I've made it a lot nicer and neater and gotten rid of those big spaces. One of the other things, just as a reminder, you can use your keyboard shortcuts. They are, if you go to my website under Working with Computers, which is linked in Moodle, you can get all the keyboard shortcuts. Control-C for copy, Control-V for paste, Control-A for highlight all, Control-Z for undo, Control-X for cut, Control-Y for redo. So if I accidentally, let's go Control-A, oops, deleted it all, Control-Z brings it back, Control-Y redoes the action. But I like it here. The only other thing that I've got is we've got this section here, which is a bit... So what we might do is if we pressed enter, can we turn that down? Well, we can make that there, but... What if we give a few things here, and can I use enter? Oh, but I don't want that there. I do want that there though. What about if I added? So I'm just playing around with where I can put enter to try and make, there we go. To try and make this look really nice and neat. So here we go, we have our finished sentence. The other thing is we don't want to make our font too small, but we want this to be noticeably, that's pretty tiny. We want that to be noticeably different. So maybe I do want to make this, that's a bit nicer. So I'm going to stop talking now. But those are some of the ways in which you can manipulate your text and make it into a better newspaper article. I hope you have a very good holidays. Bye.